here's Brodie Brazil.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm here this time to talk about the top 5 hurdles that I ever observed with student pilots. I'm talking about students turning into private pilots, maybe going on to do their instrument or commercial or multi-engine ratings, but it is a very specific challenge for a student pilot because generally speaking, they're brand new to aviation. They've never done this before. The initial lessons are different and intimidating in so many ways, and I've identified what I think are these 5 specific things. And the reason I'm making this video, I want to call out these 5 things so you, maybe as a student pilot or an aspiring student pilot, you understand from the very get-go what are going to be the hard parts, what are going to be the areas I really need to emphasize, work towards and forward with, and try to get through, and know that you're not alone. If some of these are sticking points for you, you're definitely not the only one. Initial lessons. We got to start there with our number 1. Initial lessons with ground reference maneuvers and just a lot of air work in general. You're in the practice area, but maybe you're overwhelmed by stimulations. You haven't had a headset on for this long, all the radio chatter. There's also the physiological effects of flight. You pull off a couple really steep turns for the first time, and that breakfast that you just had is feeling different in your stomach, even after, 1.7 Gs or whatever. It's a different sensation, right? And again, I think it's the newness factor. Some of you who are seasoned student pilots or private pilots by now, or well beyond that, you'll look back and probably remember that all of this was different than you thought it would be as you initially, perceived it to be. Even tightness of the cockpit, right? If you're in a Cessna 152, you're cramped in there. It might be the summer months. A lot of this might just feel uncomfortable. You're looking around the inside of the airplane. Is this a cosmetic defect? Is that airworthy? Like what's going on here? All of this is brand new to you. And also there are some pressures and stress to perform. Because you've been anticipating these lessons, now you're paying for it, the instructor's there, you want to impress them because they're new to you as well as flying is new to you. So this may not be realized. Like a lot of people think, your first few lessons are fun, and they should be. But I also realize why this is sometimes a hurdle for students. They go, whoa, what did I get myself into? And I totally understand it. Okay, the next big hurdle that I identified are the initial landings, because this is the first realization of responsibility. Like, I could bend some metal here if I'm not safe and competent at what I'm doing. Now, the instructor is there. I hate to admit this, but usually as a safety blanket for you, and me as an instructor, I'm always had my hands ready, right below the control wheel, just ready to say, my airplane, and take over. I wanted things to get far enough so that the student realized the good or bad situation they put themselves in, like carrying too much airspeed, not enough airspeed, not aligned on the center line for this landing. Like you want to let them understand that a mistake is inevitable here, but you also don't want a mistake to actually turn into something worse. But you want the student to have that first realization of like, whoa, I'm doing this. I'm in control, and I feel that responsibility. But also about landings, what students don't understand, because now they've just seen their instructor nail like 3 landings in a row, and it's easy for them, and they're talking me through it. It's not easy. It takes time and repetitions and doing this hundreds, if not thousands of times. And so you can grease every landing and land in crosswinds and land different airplanes in different runway picture settings and all that stuff. It's not something that is supposed to be easy. This is supposed to be one of those difficult things. Even once you're a private pilot, you're still not going to be totally consistent in the softest, smoothest landings you'll always want. They should be safe, don't get me wrong. But if you have that, that nail it factor, you may not be doing that every single time. And by the way, these landings or these lessons with a bunch of initial landings, they are very repetitive. I've got lessons in my logbook, both as a student and as the instructor, where it was like, 1.4 of total time. And it's like 13 landings or something, 13 takeoffs, 13 landings. We're in that pattern. Every pattern is about a 6-minute pattern. Is that math right? Am I remembering that right? So these are very repetitive lessons, and that can be a bit daunting. I mean, this is kind of where the frustration factor sets in. I can't do it. I'm having trouble with this. Doubt creeps in. Don't let that be the case. This is a hurdle. You can get over it. So many others have. Your first solo flight. Now, to be honest, this is the big one because this is the one everybody talks about. This is the intimidating one. I mean, it is quite noteworthy that now all of a sudden you're the only one in the airplane all by yourself. And I have to say, remembering my first solo from almost 20 years ago, it's getting quite that long ago at this point. The one thing that I'll always remember, I'll never forget, is looking over and not seeing anybody. Well, actually, two things. Number one, the airplane inherently performs like a trainer airplane, a 172N model, maybe I was flying. It just takes off a lot better with only one person in there. There's 100 plus pounds less of human in there. So it jumps off the runway better, but you look over and say, I'm the only one right now who's going to save my own life. So it's in your hands. But the training takes over. And I realize going into that day and maybe in the moment, there are some nerves and some stressors. But if you've been trained the right way and your instructor has confidently signed you off, they feel that when this moment comes for you, it'll be totally fine. I also realized too that this solo flight lesson this first time, you don't have a definitive knowledge of when exactly it's going to take place. This is common with a lot of students. It gets talked about. Hey, from the instructor, I've said this before. I think you're ready for the first solo. Yeah. Maybe next time. I'll float it out there. Maybe next time. We'll see how it goes. We'll do a couple laps together. We'll see how the wind's doing that day, what the weather's like, what the traffic at the airport is like, somewhere you're comfortable with. Make sure you're having a good day. We'll go through all of that. But I don't want to guarantee anything. Maybe next time. So in the student's mind, I'm not playing games. I'm just being honest, and I'm also not putting pressure. They know it's imminent, but they don't know that it for sure is going to happen on this given day or that next lesson. So the anticipation, I do understand, is kind of a factor. But here's the best part about it. And here's what I'm wanting to reassure you with. Pick the right day. You as the student, instructor as the expert, pick the right day. If something isn't vibing that day, you're not feeling it, you're not ready, fine. You could even end it right there if things are going well. Just call it a day. End on a good note and be done. And I don't think you want to get into that repetition of kicking the can down the road over and over again. But if there's something that makes it not the right day, don't do it. And that's why there should be not a lot of pressure in terms of the win part of the first solo flight. Okay, I said 5 hurdles. So we're at number 4. It's another solo item, your first solo cross-country flight. Now, if you're new into the student pilot game and you think you're going to fly from California to New York, no. Cross-country is just a flight over 50 nautical miles. That's just the expression. But yeah, you are going to have to do a first solo cross-country flight. Take off from your home airport, hypothetically, go somewhere that's more than 50 miles away. Now, 50 miles means that when you're halfway there, you can't turn around necessarily and see where you came from. Like, you're out there. You're not in the soup because that's an IFR term, but you're out there mixing it up, right? In airspace and in scenery that you've never necessarily seen before, flying your own aircraft. These days, I will say, so long as you have a GPS on your panel with a moving map or ForeFlight on your iPad in your lap, there's less of a lost factor nowadays with technically advanced airplanes. And that's not something I was fortunate necessarily to have. Some of the airplanes had a moving map, but the one I did my primary training in, I mean, I had the VFR sectional chart, I had the landmarks around me and my flight plan that I made, and that's it. So there was a real chance that somebody could get lost. I work with students often that back in the day, before a lot of these amenities, I would ask, where are we? Point to where we are on the map. And even with, VOR cross radials or any other resource that they wanted to use, they would say, I don't really know right now. So it was a possibility, and that's intimidating. Imagine you're still new at flying. You're flying away from your home airport where you feel comfortable for the first time. Now you're going somewhere else, different scenery, and now you get lost? Yeah. But again, nowadays there's a lot of tools to guard against that. And this becomes part of your training where it's more than just stick and rudder skills. Great, can you fly the airplane? Okay, nice. But now we're getting into procedures and maybe getting flight following and talking to a different airport's tower for the first time all by yourself. By the way, on the radio, no shame, your call sign plus student pilot. There's nothing wrong with that. You'll get better service by throwing that in there. But there's more variables for you as the student, and obviously a lot more trust introduced into your flight training. Okay, and lastly here, this is another big one. It's kind of like the first solo. It's that private pilot check ride, which includes a number of different variables here. Everything from the written test, which you've taken days or weeks before, the oral exam, like you sitting down with the examiner and going over all the paperwork, getting quizzed up a little bit, and then the actual practical test of flying. It's a unique blend. I mean, all of those three things are really in one, your check ride. I realize one happens on a different day. The flying and the oral part are separate entities, but in reality, it's all one big check ride. But this is a unique blend of examination. Like, when else in your life have you done these three things to pass a test for something before? Never. In college, you just fill out a Scantron. You're done. Sometimes a job interview, you talk to somebody, you show them your resume, you're done. You get it or you don't. But this is a unique process and procedure that just because it's new might feel uncomfortable. I'll also say the DPE, the designated pilot examiner's personality, could play into the check ride being really good for you, or bad, or intimidating, or marginal, or a great experience, or a mediocre one, or a bad one, whatever. But that's out of your control. Usually your instructor will have some knowledge of the DPE that's giving you this exam. Hopefully, they've got a bit of a background with them and there's mutual trust. You wouldn't be sent to this DPE if your instructor didn't think that you were ready for it. And also the intimidation factor of, well, there's only a pass or fail as a result. You're either going to walk out of there with a temporary certificate or you're going to get a pink slip. Let me just say this, though, about the pink slip, and I'm not hoping that's for you. Even the pink slip means that you've completed a certain amount of your check ride, and that if you have to finish it up, you don't need to do everything all over again. You just need to fix the areas of emphasis. Okay, so I want to make that clear. There is a pass or a fail, but ultimately you can pass a lot of things, not get your certificate, but eventually go back and rectify everything that needs it. But the check ride, I say it's a hurdle. By this point, you have not come this far and done all this training to let the check ride get in your way. Don't ever let that be the thing that stops you from the certificate. So those are the top 5 hurdles from what I remember as a student, but more importantly, from what I remember in helping train student pilots to get their private pilot license. These are fun times. You'll look back on them and say it was hard work. It was a lot of newness. It was intimidating. It was a lot of things, but I do confidently feel like years down the road, you'll look at this and say, those were the days. So, hey, if this video provided you some value, consider giving it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. Also, subscribe to this channel if you want more content just like this.